You know him from the stage, from television, from film, and now for the first time behind the camera as the director of his first film, Lucky. He directs an extraordinary cast, most notably the great and now late Harry Dean Stanton. Please join me in welcoming John Carroll Lynch.
Thank you very much for coming. I just want to thank TIFF. It's one of the diamonds of film in the world, and the support that you give it and the support that the government gives it and other corporations make that possible, and I'm most grateful for its existence. Films we like. I finished, the close-up work of knitting the film together and didn't really know anything of anybody would like it at all. And Films We Like committed after the first screening, and that was a big boost to me, so I thank them personally for that. And the last thing I'd like to say is I actually finished the cut that got us into the South by Southwest while I was working in Canada, so it was Winnipeg. So there's that. But Portage and Maine will always be close to my heart. Thanks.
By asking, you're a very prolific actor. Actually, heard someone say, I think John is in every movie ever made.
I try to be in every movie.
Yes, try. Like, I think over 110 credits on screen, which is pretty wild. Now you turn into filmmaking after those 110 credits as an actor. What makes you make that leap?
What makes you think you can do that?
Yeah. What did
I mean, I've been, it had come to my understanding over the course of the last 15 years that this was something I'd like to do. And it came from a kind of desire to tell stories that I couldn't be cast in. That I wanted to start telling stories that didn't necessarily fit in this frame. And that's kind of what the desire was. And it seemed like a good idea to do that, a way to do that. One of the things that attracted me was it wasn't simply talking heads. It had a visual ambition that needed to be fulfilled in order to make the movie work.
I have to say, for me, one of my favorite locales in the movie or scenes is the bar. It becomes this total, like it's in reality, but there's also no music in that bar, and it becomes this, I was like, is it a purgatory place? Is it an existential yoga place? Like not yoga physically, but like a mental yoga place for these people to think about the world. It becomes this total thing in the movie to me.
We wanted to make it intimate and public at the same time, and the sound design of the place was intended to create space, but you weren't quite sure how much space. It was always intended to be, how big is this bar exactly? Like, how far does it go back, and how many people are actually in there? I mean, I know I see a few people, but not very much of them. It was inspired a little bit visually by Casa Vega on Ventura Boulevard. This is a Mexican restaurant in Los Angeles that when you go in there at 10 o'clock at night, it's too dark for your eyes. I mean, it's so dark in there. And that was kind of what it was inspired by. So people could kind of vanish into the darkness and come back in. We could control the light that way.
Let's turn it to the audience for you guys to jump in. Just raise your hand. We'll repeat your question.
John, if you could talk a little bit more about the casting. Bobby Darin.
Yeah,
and Beth Grant. Can you tell us how?
A bit more about the rest of the cast.
And just
she asked
cast
about
in general.
casting. All of the cast, because we had to move so quickly, the rule was they had to be one phone call away. So from somebody in the producing staff. So in each case, that was what it was. I had worked with Ron and Barry and Ron and Barry. I'm forgetting the other person right now. Beth. And then Ira Stephen Bear had worked with James Darren, and obviously Harry had worked with David several times, so that's how that happened. It was David's idea that he play Howard, and it was a brilliant one. And then Hugo, Armstrong, everybody was basically one phone call away.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi. Lucky decides he's going to re-engage with people. I wondered, in observing older people and thinking about this a lot right now, what do you think was it that made him want to do that?
the metaphor of this man who falls and suddenly realizes he may not have years left, he may have weeks and months left, was something that I was inspired by in a lot of different ways. It had to do with my mother's death, with where my father is in his life, but also in terms of where I've been, and where I feel like we actually all are. It's just, it's easier to see when the character is 89. His fragility and vitality are easier to reflect on. So when it comes to what I wanted to talk about in the movie, that was primarily what it was how do you live knowing each day, what does your mortality mean to you and how do you live with it? And I actually love what he comes to, which is you have to find the joy inside yourself. But the other thing that I thought was really great in the movie was he doesn't find it alone. He finds it in the company of other people. And that kind of leap into song that happens in the movie is kind of his jerkily stepping forward to be counted in some way, to connect with other people. And it's also such a song of longing. Volver, it's return to my arms once more. It's all about that. So it has that in it too. And Harry's a magnificent singer. So win-win, I think.
The harmonica is very important in the soundtrack, and Harry Dean played it. Was that his idea? How did that come about?
It was in the screenplay from the very beginning, and I think it was also one of the ways in which the writers enticed Harry to do it, because Harry, I think, really saw himself first and foremost as a musician. I think that's how he looked at himself. That's what he was most precious and vain about, quite frankly. And like when we were shooting this thing, and whenever you asked for another take, the first thing you said was, "What's wrong with the last one?" But when we went up to have him play Red River, we could have just sat there for another hour with the recording going. It would have been perfectly fine. He would have, want another one? Sure, absolutely, Harry. Another one's great. Okay, one more? Sure, okay. And then when we did the singing, he was upset on the day that we did the background track that he didn't feel he sounded good. It was a Sunday morning, it wasn't warmed up, and he was like, it was the only time I saw him do this, like, I need one on the day. I gotta know it's coming. I said, I want you to have one, so we're on the same page. I definitely want you to have an opportunity to sing that live, because Harry swings. That's what his rhythm is swing rhythm, even inside mariachi. So you don't want to not have that opportunity.
I was wondering, because you have lots of experience and you know how things are done, but here working as a director, was there something that surprised you in terms of, was it more challenging that you thought or easier?
There were a lot of things that I had known intellectually were done, and that I knew what order generally they were in, but I had never been participated in. And there were things that were a lot of trust me moments. Like, we had conceived of a bar as a very dark place, and with the Alexa camera and with the anamorphic lenses that we used, it was always a beautiful place, but it wasn't dark. It was a series of light, I can't remember the exact term, but a series of focal lengths that you could see, so you could manipulate the color, and in color timing, but it wasn't ever there. And in editing, I would edit like, okay, it's going to be there. I mean, the darkness is going to be there, and she'll come out of the darkness in this moment. But you can see Beth back there, like she's off stage, and I'm just going to pretend like I can't, because they told me this is going to work, and I trust that it's going to work, and they said it was going to. So I'm just going to believe it's going to work. And for a long time, there were shots in this movie like, if it doesn't work, I've edited to the wrong. I've definitely edited the wrong way. If this is But, you know, then we got into the color timing suite, and you would have, I mean, we ran out of money before. They would have had to take a howitzer to get me out of there otherwise. I absolutely loved that portion of the work. I loved the sound bay. I loved the sound mixing suite. I loved all of that because you get to create the world. You get to tell the story, and you also are playing with time in those circumstances in a way that I didn't quite understand. The color timing is creating 3 dimensions out of time, which I just was like, it blew me away. I like was on, you know, it was like I was on acid. I had so much fun doing that, and I look forward to the next opportunity.
I was struck by how much that place, which is a real place, seemed to reflect a reality about America that since the election of Trump, we don't understand. I mean, Mexicans, African Americans, Caucasian Americans living harmoniously in 2 languages in a tiny town. Did that play a part in any of your directions?
Well, we began the conception of the town well before, well, I mean, the movie was written about concurrently with his ride down the escalator, I guess, but you know, his zeitgeist moment, which came as I was working on the film, it didn't really occur to me that I was making something that was somehow anti-American in some way. To me, it was the America that I live in every day. And I was really intent on this small town being reflective of the small town that I actually live in now. I've not lived in a small town until recently. My wife and I moved to a small town, and that looks like the town I live in. I mean, it's not necessarily that particular ethnic mix, but it's ethnically mixed, and it is absolutely reflective of the United States, and you can't strain that out. There's no cultural way to strain that out. I don't care how hard he tries. There's no cultural way to strain that out. We rely on each other so deeply and so fundamentally that it's just, it's idiotic. Anyway, one thing that I had not considered, I was at Locarno and I was talking to the gentleman who is the distributor in Belgium, and he said, I just was surprised that this movie came out of the States at this time because I get up and I read Mother Jones and I'm terrified every day, and I wonder what the hell is going on with you people, and then you make this movie that has such humanity and such care for others. It makes me feel like maybe we'll get through this. And I was like, well, thank you, and we will get through it.
It's wonderful.
Thank you. But I didn't want to make sure that the world looked like I saw it and not like some fictional small town.
Actually, before we get to the next one, the mic's getting there, I want to pick up on that a little bit. Tonally, the film addresses very serious end-of-life questions, existential crises for various characters, chiefly him, but others too.
And Howard and the Tortoise, that's an
Well,
excellent
Howard and the
example.
Tortoise,
Yes,
exactly, and to
absolutely.
get to him too. No matter how serious and touching and moving those parts are, you keep a level of humor through the film and a levity that helps us go through that. Was that always important for you to hit that note?
I mean, it's absolutely vital to the way that the movie has to work. One of the moments that I just love is he tells this bar of people who finally are wrapped around his voice. He says, there's nobody in charge, and it's all the void, and it's nothing, and what do we do with that? And he smiles. And then everybody kind of goes back to their business, and he lights up, and you wonder, did he just do that so he could light up? Is that all he did that for, was so he could have the cigarette inside? And I kind of love that we're left with the, like, man, that guy really went a long way to light that thing up.
Like an opportunist nihilist.
Exactly. It's just
For
it's
the
fantastic. I love that about the movie.
My question is, again, about the directing part of it, that there were several story monologues for your actors. Did you rehearse them much at all, or did you kind of save it till you got to set to see what they came to the table with?
Well, we didn't have time to do a lot of rehearsal. We did rehearse with Harry a lot. We came, I mean, from the time we were close to financing, every Sunday we would go up, myself and the writers, and Ira, Stephen Bear would go up to sit with Harry and go through the script. So we could get all the notes out before production. And that was very helpful. We didn't have a lot of time with the actors, but everybody came really prepared. But I will say this, and I hate to go all, Kirk Lazarus, Tropic Thunder on you, but there's no such thing as a monologue. You're talking to somebody and you're gauging their response. And it only becomes a monologue if there's no response to it, and they're not playing the response. In certain circumstances, in filming, the movie taught me that you are the person who is responding. So in that way, I learned about how to edit it. But they're never monologues. There's no such thing. That's the way I've approached it as an actor. Even if I have, here's another example of it, and again, I'm going a little bit in the weeds, kind of inside baseball, but you go out to dinner with somebody, and it's somebody you haven't seen in a while, and you sit down and you have a cocktail and you're chatting, so how are you? And then they go on for 10 or 15 minutes. And you go, wow, well, I didn't know that. That's, maybe ask a couple of questions, but essentially the floor is theirs. And then they'll, hopefully if they're not narcissists, they'll turn the floor over to you and listen, and find out how you're doing. That's actually how we talk. Quick banter dialogue, the tap, tap, tap of Aaron Sorkin, which is absolutely delightful to listen to, is not how we talk. We don't talk that way. That's artificial. Monologues, if you want to call them that, are not. They're actually how we talk, in my opinion.
Mic drop.
So that's an excellent segue to my question was, we see Lucky speaking on the red telephone there to someone, which I believe was Bell. We never know who that is.
You mean the Bell telephone?
The Bell telephone.
Yes, it was a Bell telephone.
Ah, thank you.
From the 70s.
Our sponsor.
So, we never know who it is who he's speaking. As a director, did you create a character for Harry Dean to be speaking to, or?
So one of the first conversations we had was with Richard Kahan, Ira, myself, Drago, and Logan, outside so Harry could smoke. It was our first real meeting as a group with him. And he goes, who am I talking to there, really? I mean, and we started positing, structurally who it is and who I think it is, metaphorically, or what the purpose of it is and all that. And then there was a moment, there was a pause, and he's going, none of this moved him. But then Logan goes, Harry, it's like when you call, and he goes, I'll decide who I'm talking to. and that is exactly right. That is the division of labor. It's not my job as the director to decide who the actor's talking to. But I can tell you this, Harry chose very specific people for each phone call, and if you listen to the beeps on the phone, they're different every time. And also, they're different numbers every time. Sometimes they're 9 numbers, sometimes they're 11. I don't know who he was talking to, but it worked. And as far as what it does in the movie, I think I know who he's talking to for me.
Right.
But I don't want to throw that into your head, because that's one of the primary ways, the primary mysteries of the movie, and the way in which your imagination is worked on, like when Shakespeare says, on your imaginary forces work, and that's what that does for you. And I don't want to screw that up. Whoever you thought he was talking to, you are right. Don't let anybody tell you are.
Yeah, at the back.
Hi, I just wondered if any of the dialogue was improvised, or did you really stick to the script?
I can tell you the 5 lines that are improvised. What am I supposed to do? Stick it up my ass? How about you just suck it? You were good to Mama last night. When Lucky says it is written, and he says somewhere.
Yeah.
And then I think there's one more that I'm forgetting, but that's about it. Everything else was in the script.
Can you tell us a little bit about David Lynch, who's in the movie, who's also an actor-director, the way you're now turning to be yourself? How did he get
I
in
think
there?
the balance is on
Same,
the wrong
same.
side, and it's like when you say,
Same,
hey,
same.
Lynch is directing, and you go, David Lynch? No, John Carroll Lynch. Who's acting in it? John Carroll Lynch? No, David Lynch. Did they call each other beforehand to decide this, or? Yeah.
You do it. No, you do it.
No, you do it. David came, I learned a lot about being an actor on a set from watching David work on this. He came prepared, he came with good choices, he came with choices that were surprising from the material. He also was easily directable. He took direction. He took one small direction and let it roll out through a piece of material, which is what you always want actors to be able to do. And then the other thing he did was, and I think this is where I fall down a lot of the time, and he made sure that he didn't direct. He just stayed out of it. And there were opportunities that Harry presented him, and he stayed out of it. And it was amazing, actually. I was honored by that, and I'm going to do my best to take his example.
I wanted to know how you found the town and whether all those pieces were in one location or whether it was in various ones.
They weren't all in the same locations. Piru, California was the primary location for the exterior walking scenes in the town itself. That was all done in Piru, and it's a very sophisticated little town. It's a film sophisticated little town. It knows exactly what it's worth, and it's worth quite a bit. But Tim shot the place in a way I'd never seen it before, and I've worked there 4 times, so it was very different. The first time I worked there, it stood in for Texarkana, Texas. So it has a wide variety of uses, but in this case, it stood in for this kind of dying town. And then other things, interiors, were in various locations, including North Hollywood and Van Nuys, California, and Sunland.
I have a question. I don't know if there's one more with the mic, but how does it feel to then, after the shoot, the film, is ready to be shown, has been shown, to know that you've now created the last Harry Dean Stanton closing scene where he walks away in the landscape, like possibly the most perfect way to end an on-screen career?
We didn't conceive of it as his last film. I mean, we all suspected that he was likely not going to work again because he just didn't want to that much. He, as Logan said, he was at the place in his life where he would like to do nothing and then rest after. But it has become what it's become. It was always supposed to be a celebration. The fact that it's partially become a eulogy is odd, but the weight of the movie only deepens because of that. It doesn't change the essential nature of the questions in the movie. It would be worse if it did, if his death somehow altered that. But it doesn't. It actually, in some ways, I never imagined that Lucky wasn't just still walking. But now we know how far he got. And that changes the way in which I look at the movie and changes the way in which you look at the movie, and has to, of necessity, especially a movie so intimately wrapped around its lead actor. Everybody involved came for Harry. Everybody. They didn't even know him, they came. There was Almitra Corey called a friend, because we were working on such a limited budget, called a friend in Virginia, that she's from there and knew him as a really good on-set dresser, and called him and said, listen, left a message and sent him the script by email and said, hey, I'm working on this movie with Harry Dean, and I know we can't really afford anything, but if you would come out and sleep on my couch, I'd love you to do the movie with me. And she didn't hear anything for an hour or so, and she needed to kind of figure out if this was something that would actually be done. So he called him back again, and he picked up and said, hey, yeah, I've already got my ticket. And you want to read it? No, I'm sure it's great. Harry's in it, so I'm sure it's great. Just one question, should I wear my Harry Dean t-shirt on the first day of filming, or should I wait?
I think that's actually, there's one more there, so we'll do it. Yes.
Hi. Sorry. There's sort of juggle between spirituality and a little bit of dialogue that's of a religious nature, without begging too much interpretation out of you. Kind of, were you sort of looking for a balance of a religious conversation in the movie, or because he seems he's atheist, it seems.
Yeah, he's both feet in on the atheism.
But there is some dialogue that speaks to it. Namely, when he walks in the bar and he says,
one of you will betray me.
There's a little bit of that. Is that more of a humorous nature, or is there sort of a...
Harry Dean said that probably, 3 times a month at Dantana's, because it was funny. It wasn't intended to do anything but it's sacrilegious, obviously. So I think that's essentially the relationship of the character to that particular phrase. That being said, the movie deals with a fundamental question that religion deals with, and in the cosmologies of all religions, which is what happens when we die. And while Lucky is decidedly convinced in full faith as an atheist, my own, I'm not quite sure, and it has to reach me too. It can't just be about somebody who's in full faith. To me, the reason why I liked the fact that he was an atheist was not only because it was, he could be on, the actor could stand on 2 feet and tell the truth and not worry about anything else, but also because it raises the stakes, in my opinion, because there's no resurrection, there's no reincarnation, there's no coming back, there's no heaven, there's no hell. He's got whatever time he's got left, and he's got to come to some resolution about that. And the resolution he chooses is joy, and isn't that wise? I mean, isn't that what we should all be choosing? I mean, that's all I wanted to say was, doesn't that make sense? Why are we worried about anything else? Our time is so limited on this earth. Why don't we just live it in joy? That seemed to be something that I can't hear enough of. And I don't mind any movie that says it. So if I got a chance to make a movie that says it, yay.
John, you are a very generous guest. Thank you for being here and being so generous on stage. The film opens Friday, everyone. Good luck in Hamburg.
Great. I want to say a couple things before we go. I'm going to do the pitch and then I'm going to mention something. Movies like this more and more are reliant on you, the audience who sees them in these circumstances, to tell your friends and to get your friends to come. If you love the movie, please feel free to tell everybody you are in physical or non-physical contact with to come to see the film. It opens across Canada on Friday, and it is the hashtags are Lucky Film and hashtag Harry Dean Stanton. That's the pitch. Now I want to mention just one thing that just happened, which was lovely. The first movie I was ever cast in was Grumpy Old Man. I played a moving man, and I was terrible. I really was bad. And the director of that movie is here, Donald Petrie, and I just want to thank you very much for what you've done. I was bad. I was really bad.
He made you.
I was new, absolutely.
And it was cold.
And it was cold. It was absolutely cold. Thanks very much for coming.